Hello everyone, this is Matt. I'm going to talk about Garry's Mod. And this is a game that modifies HalfLife 2. And it came out December 24th, 2004, its first version. And that would have been pretty primitive. It's made by Garry Newman and his company, Face Punch Studios. And it says that it's the 8th best-selling PC game with 10 million copies sold. And that would be as of today, which is January 15th, 2019. And it says it's got a 10 out of 10 on Steam, and it's a pretty well-known game. Garry's Mod is something that I got 3.5 years after it came out. So I didn't get it in 2004 when it came out. I got it 3.5 years later. It says I purchased it June 17th, 2008. So 2008. And that would have been while I was still in high school. So I would have been getting through my junior year in high school. And I would have just, my birthday's February 11th, so I would have been 17. So what got me into Garry's Mod was I was in school, and I was in a computer class, and I was not doing my work, and instead I was on YTMND, which was a site that was pretty popular at the time. It's You're the Man Now, Dog, is what it stands for, which comes from some movie with Sean Connery, where he says, "You're the man now, dog." And I saw all these G-Man videos, and these were videos with the character G-Man from Half-Life 2, and they were usually set to Tiny Tim's having a wonderful time. And just so you get the gist of what I'm talking about, let's see, I can bring it up here. The one that I would have saw would have been this one. And I would have seen this one. So, I'm trying to get my stand work here. There we go. So I would have saw that when I was in school, and then there was a bunch of YouTube was early. That stand working there. YouTube was still in its early stages. So, and I was just getting into YouTube. So there was also a bunch of videos on YouTube with Garry's Mod, which was used as machinima. So people were using it as like a way to make videos with characters from Valve games, which at the time in 2008, which is when I would have got it, would have meant that it would have had Half-Life 2 models that I could have used for if I wanted to make machinima, such as you saw there, the G-Man. It would have had at that time, I think it even had some Half-Life 1 models. It would have had, let's see, well, Portal 1 came out October 10th, 2007. Basically, anything that used the Source engine. So it would have had Portal models in there, since I own Portal. It could have accessed. Team Fortress 2 came out October 10th, it says, as well. No, Portal 1 was October 10th, and Team Fortress 2 was October 10th, it says. Right. So that would have been in there too. The Team Fortress 2 models that I could access. And shortly thereafter, later that year, in November 17th, it would have Left 4 Dead models, because that would come out. All these Valve games. So anything that Valve made with the Source engine, Garry's Mod could access and put into its world, and that was awesome. And so if there was a game on Steam that wasn't even made by Valve, there was a pretty bad one, I thought, Zeno Clash, and that you could put that in there. You could put that in, and I'm just looking through my games. So that's the whole gist of it. You could put any model from any Valve game into Garry's Mod, and it would also carry over to Counter-Strike. You could put Counter-Strike in there. That was a big one. Counter-Strike Source at the time. You could put any of this stuff in the Garry's Mod. So it was pretty nice. It was pretty alluring, and it was like $10. So I decided I was gonna get it, and I got it, and I did never regret it, because it was a awesome game, or really not really a game as much as a mod. So basically, I first thing I did when I got it, I had just finished school, because it was June 17th, 2008. So I had a whole summer ahead of me. I had like summer work, but who does that, right? So I decided I would I ended up playing my whole summer, I think, playing Garry's Mod, and I did that because I really enjoyed it. I loaded up a single player game first, and I put a bunch of NPCs that you could spawn against each other, and I created a big battle between the two, and that was awesome. And then I messed around with the physics, and you could put you got like a tool gun, so you could like shoot balloons on the things and put them up into the sky, and at the time I probably wanted to make YouTube videos, but I didn't have a lot of time when I was 17, but I wanted to, and as I'm thinking about it, I would end up going on the servers, multiplayer servers, and I would join them, and for the first time, really, there was a bunch of people, I think, who were not American. So there was a bunch of British people because Garry himself, the guy who makes the game, is British. So I guess he marketed it there first. So there was a bunch of British people, and and that was funny. And so I was talking to British people, and then there was other people from other countries, and that was cool. So what these servers were that I joined first were co-op servers. So you went through the Half-Life 2 campaign with like 15 to 20 people. It was crazy. I never did that before. So that was cool. And then like I saw a moderator spawn in, and he could do anything. Like we had a problem where it glitched out, and he like came in there and fixed it. So that was the first time I saw like a mod come on in a game, because any other game I played had been like whatever it was, like Medal of Honor or Battlefield back then. It would have, the mods were never to usually be seen. They just played along with you. The game just ran good, but in Garry's Mod sometimes things glitched out, so you needed the moderator. And like on these co-op servers. Well, anyway, I quickly found out about roleplay servers, and these were servers where people would they would roleplay different characters in a city usually, and they could like type slash. They would usually start as a citizen, and they could these would be like dark roleplay servers is what it would be called, made by Rickster, I think, and they would type like slash gun dealer to be a gun dealer, or slash cook to be a cook, or you type slash cop or CP to be voted in as a police officer, or you would type slash mayor to be voted in as the mayor. And so you had all these different societal roles you could be, and it was pretty cool. And because it came from the games, it had all the guns from Half-Life in it, and from Counter-Strike, and so you had these like peaceful servers where people were just hanging out and talking to each other and role playing as characters, and it was cool. I'd not seen anything like that, and I decided that I would wanted to use these guns in the game and make it more interesting. So I decided at that point as I would be the Vigilante, and I made myself the Vigilante, and so I renamed myself on Steam to Vigilante. I think before then I was carrying another name, that it might have been Osu Sensei or something. Might have been my handle back then, but I used the Vigilante as my name, and this this character was based off of a movie called Death Wish, and Death Wish is a movie where it's from the 70s, I believe. It's a movie where Charles Bronson is a vigilante. He becomes a vigilante because his wife gets murdered, and and so he becomes a vigilante, and he revenges his wife, and he has a hard time at first in that movie. He like throws up after he shoots somebody, and it's like it's a pretty good movie. And then by the time they made a sequel, Death Wish 2, he's a much more cold vigilante, because his daughter, I think, gets raped in that movie, so now he's like pissed, and he's like a much more cold vigilante, and he goes out there, and he just starts going after these guys, and he kills them all. And then they made another one like Death Wish 3, where he was just like ridiculous, like he took out an entire town of gang members, and saved this town. And then Death Wish 4 or something, he's like taking on the entire mafia and like wiping out entire like giant mafias. But but like this was one of my favorite movies that I saw growing up. So naturally, this kind of all clicked in my mind when I saw, this peaceful society, and I wanted to kind of like disrupt it in the game. And these servers held about like typically 30 people, sometimes more. Sometimes some of them went up to 60. And you could make it as big as you wanted. It could be more, but the server only could handle so much load, so they would crash. But anyway, if you had too many people, or there could even be a malicious person who'd come on and he would just, because what could do is you could press Q and it would bring up a menu and you could spawn a bunch of props. So you could spawn any asset or prop from all of the video games, all the different Valve games, and that was awesome. You could play around with all these different assets that Valve made. You could play with the physics because you had the physic gun from Half-Life, so you were able to like pick these objects up and move them around like this. There would be a little stream attached to it, and you could bring it closer to you or further away. Garry's Mod is a really awesome game. That's why it has a perfect score on Steam, and it's the 8th best-selling PC game. And so I remember announcing myself as the Vigilante on chat, and that's how I would prefer to do it, because so that's what I don't know why, but I announced myself on chat, and I announced myself as the Vigilante, and I told my story about how my wife was walking home and how she got murdered, and how I tried to catch him, and I ended up tracking this guy, and I found him, and I instead of killing him, I had restraint, and I turned him over to the police because I was a upstanding citizen. So we had this trial, but the trial was a mockery because this guy had connections with whoever, and he was able to pay off the judge, and therefore he got out scot-free on the murder of my wife. So I'd been wronged, and the courts did nothing. So I decided that I would take matters into my own hands, and I killed the guy. And then I decided, you know what? That's not enough. I have to cleanse this whole city of its taint, is what I said. And so I went after the whole city in Garry's Mod as the Vigilante, and I would get a gun, but I wouldn't just attack somebody. I would lead up to attacking somebody. Now, if I had seen an injustice, I would go after the person who I saw the injustice. But if I saw that there was no injustice, I'd have to make up my own injustice. So I would look at the game, and I would just accuse somebody of having a crime that they may or may not have committed. If somebody had actually committed the crime in chat, or I didn't say it, but somebody said, "Why did you kill me?" or something, I would jump on that. So I prefer that it be real, but I would accuse somebody of a crime. Usually it was real. Sometimes I took it. Sometimes I did allow a little bit of a framing to take place, but this was just in fun. So I would look at somebody in the game, and I would say, "You have committed a crime," and I would tell him he has to confess and turn, or that he would be shot. I would take him out, and I would talk in a very mysterious tone, but I would just be very, very, like, I was a very good character I created, and even though it was all over chat, it was very effective because I was very, like, articulate, and I had very good grammar, and I got people's attention, and what ended up happening was, like I said, I did attack these people sometimes randomly. I said that they pointed a gun in the face of the city, and I wasn't going to wait for them to shoot. And anyway, people loved my character. A lot of them, gamers. Some of them are assholes. So some of them, were assholes, and a lot of them people just loved my character. So I ended up getting a following, And I didn't expect that, but I ended up getting a following. So what I ended up doing was I ended up creating a Steam group at the time. They were new Steam groups, and I ended up creating a Steam group at the time. So I created one called the Vigilante Brothers, TVB. And this would have been very quickly, I would say, in my senior year, probably early on in the senior year of my high school. So, after I played the first month and a half of just like single player Garry's Mod and like co-op and learned about dark role play, I would have gone to doing this. It might have even been right before school started. So I had a couple people join and then it started to grow more and more, and I ended up getting over 350 members very quickly in the Vigilante Brothers, and that was really cool. So I had some power in Garry's Mod. So you didn't want to mess with me in Garry's Mod, because if you were really somebody that you best to be in Garry's Mod, or you were just opposing us, we would have a kill on sight list, the KOS list, and we would put you on this KOS list and any of my vigilantes would come after you, and it was really cool. It was like we ruled this area, and people would go on these like little raids with me when we would join servers, and we would do our thing, and we would just get more and more people to join us, and sometimes, right before we killed somebody, or because obviously you respawn in Garry's Mod, so you had to kill them again. So sometimes before we killed them again, they got tired of being killed and they didn't want to be killed anymore, so they decided to join us. So it was because this little cult / gang that I had in Garry's Mod, more like a cult, because I would call people. Part of my personality in the game would be my persona is that I would call people brother. I'd be like, "Hello, brother," but I wouldn't do it on the microphone. But that's essentially, it'd be like, "Hello, brother," and I would say, "I am the master vigilante," and it was just cool. It was cool, and they ended up calling me master and the vigilante, and what ended up happening. I had two people that I decided I would make kind of like officers in my organization, because this is what Garry's Mod became about for me. It became about the Vigilante Brothers, and I made one guy was British, but he was like crazy, and I had to get rid of him, and he was all crazy, so he was like an asshole. And the second guy was this kid named Zach, and he was okay, but later I'd have to get rid of him too, and he turned into a very malicious guy, and he would come after me, and I think he tried to hack my account, but I can't prove that, but I think he tried to hack my account. But anyway, what ended up, and I think he may have succeeded somehow, but what ended up happening is that I would get banned a lot from these servers, because we took over the whole server. So like people who wanted to create, I don't know. I mean, a lot of server owners or moderators. First of all, were on a power trip. Some of them were younger. Some of them were just kids. They were on a power trip. They wanted to ban anybody who was different. So they banned us for that reason. And other times we just took over the whole server, and it kind of like whatever server they had became our server, because we would just take it over. So we got banned a lot, and I often had to petition people and get them to unban us, and then we would just do it again. But what ended up happening was that I decided I was going to create my own server, and I had been interested in servers since I was younger, when I had Medal of Honor, and I always wanted to have a server. It's like my dream, and I never had one, so I always wanted to have a server. So I got a server, and that happened in the winter, I take it, of either like Christmas time 2008, or maybe like January 2009. I can't really say, but I know that I had this little air card, and it allowed me to connect to the internet on a computer through my cell phone, because back then there wasn't anything like hotspots on cell phones or anything like that, and the cell phones were pretty primitive. I don't know if I had a BlackBerry, but I mean that was better than the ones I had in the '90s or something. But it was still pretty primitive. It didn't have like we have now. So basically, I had this little error card. Well, little. It was like this big. It would plug into a laptop USB, and I was able to actually get the SRCDS, the software that you need to host your own server. And I hosted my own Garrys Mod server for the first time, and people were able to connect to me because I couldn't host it off my internet connection at home because it was a local area network. And when you're on a local area network, you can't host anything. It sucks because you're on a fake IP that connects to the main IP. But like this had its own IP. People were able to connect to me, but obviously it was a really shitty air card. So it didn't host really strongly, and it could hold only like about 9 people, and so if somebody came on as well and they were like downloading something in the background, like a torrent or something, if they were downloading something, it would slow the whole server down. It would slow the whole server down, and that sucked. But I put the server up, and Garry's Mod was hopping at the time. There was a lot of people playing Garry's Mod, and I just had, I think the first thing I had was just the base map that came up, which was this like big flat grass. I think it might even been called flat grass. I don't remember, but it was just this big flat grass, and one guy came on named Toaster, and this guy really was nice, and I was nice, and I was like, he's my first person ever came on my server. I was like, welcome to my server, and there was just one guy, and then his brother popped on, the doctor, and I was like, wow. I started talking to them, and then some more people started popping on. I'm like, wow, I could see how I could get people to pop on. So, people, my, this is just flat grass, and people are popping on. I was like, wow. So I ended up getting the map that my favorite roleplay map, or dark roleplay, getting dark roleplay, putting all the files in, and everything that you need, getting all the glitches fixed out. Like I needed the Counter-Strike data in there. I had to learn how to do that, and I did that. And then I put that on, and that was pretty popular. I had this group of friends starting to form. A guy named Deathwish came on, who'd become a friend of mine, and then Toaster's cousin Fury came on, and there was all these different people that came on. And obviously, I had 350 people that I could draw from my Vigilante Brothers, so I could just message all those people, and I could get random people to come on. So I had this little server, and it was awesome, and we had a great time. And instead of being the vigilante in these servers, I was the server owner. I could do anything I wanted, so I didn't need it for, it was much more interesting to me to just mess around with the game at that time. So I would do everything that everybody else couldn't. I would fly through the map. I wouldn't usually do it in front of them because that would be kind of. I didn't want to abuse my power because that's not fun. But I would fly a little bit when nobody saw me, and you could go through walls and stuff. I wouldn't cheat or like attack them or anything, but I would just go through walls. I was on a whole nother level. I was like on a god compared to everybody else, and I could spawn anything. Like whereas they could spawn props and stuff. I could spawn guns. I could spawn money. I could do anything, and I just set up objects in the server. I would create like little mini games for the people on the server, and I had an office area for me because you could own doors, so that you could like own different parts of the map that you could block off for everybody else that you own. You had a key for. And so I had a mayor office. I had a testing center. So that was part of the content I created for the players. As I had a testing center, so they had to come over, and it was like live content because I was the guy. interacting as a testing center with these people, and I would test different things on them, and sometimes I'd kill them, sometimes I wouldn't, and if they survived my test, I'd give them money, and then like I also would build like ships. I always wanted to build a ship with the physics in the source engine, where like would like shake the ship like this when it would fly, but it was still cool. I could build a little ship, and I would so like different things would happen. Like the doctor, Toaster's friend, he was a young kid, and he would talk on the microphone, and he was that squeaker voice, so he had a really high pitched voice, so it was really entertaining to hear this kid, because people would mess with this little kid, and he would get so upset, he'd get so mad. So what he ended up doing was he would get a bunch of guns, and he would just shoot everybody. And I had rules against doing that, because you had to have a reason to shoot everybody, or else everybody get pissed. Like even I had reason to kill people, and I made this awesome organization. But he was just this kid, and I banned him and I kicked him, but then I would unban him because he was just a kid, and he'd get back on. I would do rinse and repeat, and he was Toaster's brother, and Toaster was the opposite. Toaster was very responsible, and he always liked to be the police officer, and everybody liked Toaster because Toaster was cool. And anyway, that was all good. That was fun. The one guy, Fury, he had his own apartment in the game, so it was like this virtual world. And I started to think how I could improve this, because people were customizing their dark roleplay, and I wanted to have like a game that I could put into the dark roleplay and add additional roles. Like I wanted there to be a judge. I wanted there to be a just different roles. I had all these different roles. I had a book with all these different roles that I wanted there to be, that I wanted to add to the game. Like maybe a lawyer, maybe a like you could add any role to the game, and it was awesome. But what I'm trying to say next that happened was I wanted to see what was going on my server behind my back, because I saw how people acted in front of me. I wanted to know if these people were the same people when I wasn't on, because people would like suck up. So I wanted to see how do these people act when I'm not on. So I tried to create a character and go on there, but people found out it was me because I have a very unique way of speaking. So they found out it was me. So I had to change it up a little bit. So I came back with a character that was just crazy as all hell, Nikolai Molotov, and he was this Russian that I created, and he had a high, like everything was in caps. Is what I'm trying to say, and he typed, everything was in caps, and he was just crazy Russian. He claimed to be like in his 70s, and he was this crazy Russian. He claimed to be a part of the Soviet Union. And he claimed that in the 70s he was in the KGB, and he was a disco. He came to the U.S. and learned about disco on a mission where he was supposed to assassinate an ambassador, and it was like disco, yeah, disco, and he would like tell this whole story. And obviously I did this over text, but I also had a persona ready to go, but I did it mainly over text. Because it just kept things more mysterious, and people love Nikolai, but I was able to just spy on everybody and everything, and it was funny. I didn't know it was me. I could also spy on people without even being in the game, because I had